I usually like to start this conversation by showing people the Wikipedia page titled Incident at Antioch. This is to show them that this is not some rogue conspiracy theory that I came up with. This is something biblical scholars have been studying for hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of years. Paul goes to a city, he teaches his doctrine, and then he leaves. Jesus' actual apostles show up, and when the people told them what Paul said, they said, no, that's not what Jesus taught. This is what Jesus taught. When Paul finds out, he gets mad. How dare you reject my doctrine? Excuse me? Whose doctrine? By his own admission, Paul was teaching his own doctrine, not the doctrine of Jesus, which brings up the question, what are the differences? Well, to name a few, Jesus said one cannot work for both God and money. Paul said, let the laborers work for money. Jesus said, blessed is the woman that makes herself equal to man. Paul said, make thy woman submissive to her husband. Jesus said, you will know them by their works. Paul said, you are saved by faith. One just has to realize Paul was never a disciple. He never studied under Jesus. He never listened to any of Jesus' parables. He was not present at the Sermon on the Mount. His mandate was to declare my name to the Gentiles. He was supposed to go to Rome and tell the Romans the Son of God's name is Jesus, but he did not want to do so. Instead, he went to Galatians, he went to Corinthians, he went to Antioch where he rebuked Peter. Excuse me? Who is Paul to rebuke Peter? Peter was a disciple of Jesus. Peter did study under Jesus. Peter did listen to Jesus' parables. He memorized them and told them to others. Peter was present at the Sermon on the Mount. A disciple is one learning from a master. An apostle is one who has learned from a master and is now qualified to teach. It is not possible for Paul to be an apostle to Jesus if he was never a disciple. He should have listened to Peter and learned Jesus' teachings. Instead, he raised himself up above the apostles. Jesus lowered himself. He bowed down before his disciples. He washed their feet, the job of a slave, and told them to do so for others. Before Jesus, man had this belief that God was this omniscient, all-powerful being that would strike you dead for merely looking at him. Jesus changed that perception into one of a loving father figure that cared for his children. Paul said that Jesus was the Son of God. Jesus taught that we were all children of God. Jesus did not say, my Father in heaven. Jesus said, our Father in heaven. In his letter to Galatians, Paul wrote, that is when I became your father. Excuse me? Paul not only raised himself up above the apostles, he rose up to give himself a title even higher than Son of God. He made himself equal to God? I think not. Paul is not my God. He is not my father. He is not my teacher. At best, he is my brother, and not a very good one at that. He self-appointed himself an apostle and began teaching his own doctrine. He is known as the great deceiver for how he has deceived the nations into believing his false doctrine, a doctrine known as Christianity. Jesus was never a Christian. The first person the Christians killed was Jesus. As a rebuke to Paul, James wrote in his gospel, faith without works is dead. Hear that again. Faith without works is dead. If you believe you can just go to church every Sunday and have faith in Jesus, that he'll magically whisk you up to heaven in some rapture and you'll live happily ever after in paradise, well, you're in for a big shock. Jesus does not care what you believe. He wants to know what you have done for him. What are your works? Have you fed the hungry? Have you clothed the naked? Have you healed the sick? Have you sheltered the homeless? Have you comforted the addict? What is your contribution to society that Jesus would want the likes of you in his tribe? I'm Joe. I spent years studying Jesus' teachings through Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I spent decades applying those teachings to my life. I am qualified to teach. If you want to learn more, subscribe to my channel. I'm just getting started. Thanks for watching.